Now you talked about Nigerians being sensitive about borrowing, and I'm wondering, is the perception about borrowing, is it real or imaginary?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think one, the facts. If you look at the numbers, the whole debate about borrowing is completely misconstrued and misunderstood, because Nigeria has a debt to GDP ratio of 20%. It's quite low. I told you China is at 250. And neighbours, Ghana 60, 70, Ethiopia at 50. So we're not overly indebted. We're not overly indebted. We have in the past had debt to GDP ratio as high as 75%. That was when we had the Paris Club and the crisis, but we're nowhere near that. Now, the question, I think, and the debate should really move not from debt, but to investment. Because if you don't have the funds to invest and grow your economy, you can't compete, you can't create jobs, you can't grow. So we have, as an administration, said, look, this economy is not growing optimally. And the reason why it's not growing optimally is that we don't have the right infrastructure. We don't have power, we don't have roads, we don't have rail, we don't have housing, we don't have adequate investment in hospitals, in schools. We need to get this economy grow. We need to stimulate this economy and get it growing. To do that, we have to increase our debt levels over the next couple of years gradually, and then it begins to taper off as revenue from that, the growth replaces the debt. That's the economic model. Well, we did the numbers even before we went into recession, and we said, look, this is a strategy we have to pursue. We have to get the Nigerian economy growing. So I think the argument is, because it's a very emotive argument, it's misplaced. It's not backed up by the numbers. The numbers say that Nigeria's debt to GDP is manageable. Where we have a challenge, let me just finish, please. Where we do have a challenge, and we're very honest in this administration, is our debt service to revenue. What those numbers are telling us is that out of our revenue, debt service is consuming, well, the IMF said it was 60, we say it's 45, but even at 45, even if we assume it's 45, it's too high. And what does that point to? That points to two things. That says your debt service is too high, your revenue is too low. The question to be answered is, what are you doing about it? What are we doing about it? We're improving our debt service by restructuring our debts. A lot of what we owed were treasury bills. 91-day, 180-day treasury bills. So every 90 days, every 180 days, we roll it over, we pay interest on interest. We're just compounding it. We said, look, this doesn't make any sense. So we restructured out a lot of those T-bills, went into the bond market. And the average cost of borrowing for government, when we came in, was as high as 21%. Now it's trending down towards 11, 12%. That's a deliberate debt strategy that we've pursued with the Debt Management Office. The second thing we did was we said, look, borrowing in the domestic economy is too expensive. One, it's expensive in terms of interest rate. Two, we are crowding out the private sector. The market is not deep enough for government to be borrowing so massively and also, accommodate the growth needs of the private sector. So we restructured our portfolio away from domestic debt into the Eurobond market, which is cheaper and longer, and that again is reducing our debt service. Now, in the area of revenue, I could talk all night about what we're doing on revenue, because that's my favorite topic. If there's one thing that we've got to sort out in this economy for us to really grow, is revenue. And we're focusing very, very strongly on revenue, on tax, on plugging leakages, on sorting out some of the issues with our state-owned enterprises and making them more accountable, and making sure that every naira of Nigerian money, whether it's from oil, whether it's from tax, whether it's from fees and charges, is properly accounted for and is delivering for the people what we expect.
Just trying to compare notes between two administrations, radically different in their approach to debt service, and one went for outright debt cancellation, and this current administration is going for a borrowing spree, $74 billion, and still going for more.
See, again, I said before, the problem with the whole debt issue is it's extremely emotive. Because even your language, a borrowing spree, sounds so...
Is it my language or the reality?
It isn't the reality, you see, because you must understand what are you trying to do in your economy? Do you want to grow? Because you see, no economy is sitting waiting for Nigeria to catch up. No country is saying, oh, Nigeria, don't worry, let the oil revenue improve, then you'll do power, then you'll do roads, we'll be waiting for you. No, it's dog eat dog. All our neighbors are busy gearing up their industrial capacity, improving their manufacturing, saying, look, target the Nigerian market. Every other country is competitive.
What about the social inclusion?
Let me take your question. Let me take your question. Let me take your question. I don't like the word borrowing spree, so I'm going to take you on that borrowing spree issue, because it's really emotive and it gets people very, very excited and agitated without understanding the issues. Let's deal with the issues. Nigeria has a major problem of infrastructure. You cannot grow without infrastructure. We are not competitive. Most of our manufacturing, the factories that have closed down, jobs that we have lost, are on three things: power, transportation. Those are the biggest problems we have: power, transportation, infrastructure. Take rice. Potentially, we should be a rice exporter. Why were we the world's biggest rice importer? Why? Because it was cheaper to ship rice from Vietnam, from China, from Thailand, dump it in Lagos, than to grow rice in Ebonyi and move it to Lagos by road. That was costing us jobs. This government is saying, look, guys, we need to sort this infrastructure. So that's what we have focused on. And everything we've done is flowing out of that absolute need to get this economy growing, to create jobs for our young people. We must have infrastructure. Infrastructure will allow businesses to open. Businesses will employ our people. Employing our people will create an internal economy where we can feed ourselves, where we can clothe ourselves, where we can house ourselves and create jobs for our people. That's how economies work. And I told you, look, roads, we were not spending. Rail, we had none. Power, we had none. How do you expect businesses to compete? What do? They close up, they move to Ghana, and under ECOWAS, they export into Nigeria. That's killing jobs for Nigerians. So this government said, we must put Nigerians first. To put Nigerians first, we must sort out our infrastructure. We don't have the money right now because oil price has plummeted. In 2012, we earned 8 trillion from oil. In 16, it was 2.7. So our revenue had gone. We were facing recession and we needed infrastructure. So what did we say? We said, look, we're going to have to borrow, but we will borrow responsibly and we'll borrow as cheaply as possible. So where did we go first? We went to the concessional borrowers, lenders, those who lend to us at 1.5% for 40 years, 0%, 0.5%. That's where we went first. We went to China Exim, we went to the African Development Bank, we went to the concessional lenders first. And then we went to the Eurobond market to top it up. And of course, our domestic market. But even in the domestic market, with what we've done, we've brought down the cost of borrowing because we've recognized that we have to do this. If you look at the borrowing in the budget just signed, it's lower than last year because we said, we were very honest. We put out a 3-year ERGP. We said, couple of years, you're going to see a rapid increase in borrowing. Then you're going to start seeing it slow down because we expect growth to return. As growth returns, improve your revenue. As your revenue improves, you'll get more taxes and then you'll be able to rely less on borrowing. That's the strategy. It's an investment spree.